So on today's episode of Taking Back My Power, I've got my friend Ben, who's going to be talking about a scenario where he felt like his power was getting taken away from him. I'm going to be asking him what he did to regain control of his power, how did it make him feel once his power was taken away, what he would have done differently, if anything. And if there's any advice that he can give to the listeners. So thank you, Ben, for joining me.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to join another podcast. It's nice to be back.
My pleasure. So can you give an example of a situation where you feel like your power was taken away from you?
How have been taken away from me? I would say I like to base it on what's happened in the last 18 months. So we're talking, I had lots of things happened that weren't expected. I had everything in line, prepared. I was like, okay, from this point after my birthday, this is what I would like to do. Then I'll do this, I'll do that, which would be, it wasn't set in stone at the time, but it was ideas. And then comes along March and I became poorly at one point. We didn't know what this was, and then we found out what it was. And then I was asked to leave by recommendation to leave, and my flat in London would still be there when I'm ready to return. So my decision making was taken away from me in this case.
So you said that this happened after your birthday, and you said you had all these plans. So what plans did you have?
So I had plans to do different. I was still seeking work at the time, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to work. I had plans to move from one property. So I was going to give up the flat and then move somewhere else. So I was going to do probably one housing association to the other, or it'll be within the same housing association. That was put on hold or shelved because we didn't know where we were going because of all of this.
Because of
All of this COVID stuff that was coming up. No one knew what was what. I was getting confused like everybody else. We had everything planned out, right? By certain dates, this is going to happen. And then it didn't. We were very uncertain about at this point after that, after I had all these plans set out about how these were going to come about. And now it's just over 18 months later. We picked up where we left off and we seem to be implementing those plans that I had.
So you said that you felt ill. Was it due to COVID?
Yes, I was. This was before it was announced as COVID. Told stay at home, lock doors, keep windows open, and it was very, very hot. This environment because it was a flat in the flat, not a lot of airflow. Despite having windows open, I asked for help. The help didn't come. Roughly 2 weeks earlier, I'd ended up in A&E. I'd had probably 5-6 seizures in a row with no apparent reason. Nobody knew why. It was really bad as it had ever been. Had not known it as bad as that before. Nor had a member of staff who was there at the time. They'd never seen it as bad as that with me. So we did an overnight observation in the hospital, and then that came to the conclusion of unknown. So they didn't know what caused it. But 2 weeks later, I then got all the symptoms of what we would have been described as COVID symptoms. So it could have been a build-up before that, or something in relation to that.
So you mentioned that you got kicked out of your house. Was it because of COVID, or was it because they just couldn't support you anymore?
They did it on a welfare point of view. That the people who could, I was one of those people who could. I picked up all my stuff and put it in my mum's car, and I've been with them ever since for the last 18 months. Straight through, with the occasional visit back and forth from London, from where my parents are to London. And it's like I've now made it's a big decision, but it's not an easy one to make at the same time. That moving out of the flat is the right thing to do, and I've chosen where I want to be moving to now. So
where you're moving to now, are you gonna get the support that you need?
I went looking at another supported housing environment. and under the Housing Association in Century, which is the one I'm currently registered with in London, I decided against going for that option for a second time. I just didn't think that I would be the right fit for that scheme. So I've gone and opted for getting myself a 2-bedroom bungalow with the scheme that's called Help to Buy.
Okay.
And the scheme Help to Buy was not originally on the list of things, but it actually, in the long run, gives me social security for when I'm later on in life, because it means I've got somewhere that I can call my own for as long as I want to.
So in terms of like support,
For support,
yeah.
now this is not a supported environment, but it's through another housing association.
Okay, so
So I'm transferring from one housing association to another for me to have this property. So I'm basically buying this 2-bedroom bungalow. So I buy a percentage of it and I rent the rest.
okay.
And it's not supported. I'm
So
going
like
to have
if you have a seizure in the
right.
middle of the night,
Oh,
then
this is the slightly more complicated part, yes, and we have taken a lot of consideration into these different options. I'm going to go down the route of having a landline put in and connect to that landline a local service that the council provide via Lifeline. And we have one of those instead of the pull cord system, which is in a supported housing scheme. So we use. Yes. Yes, I've had experience of these lifelines before where they went wrong a few times, but that's inevitable. I did ask about integrated system similar to what supported housing have, but they said that the housing association I'm transferring to do not provide that service. So I've had to opt for a lifeline option instead.
So coming back to, the podcast, Second Back Your Power.
Yes.
So when you were told that you had to leave your old housing association because of health conditions,
yeah,
how did it make you feel?
Being asked to leave, that's been an ongoing battle. I left for the purposes of my own welfare because it was the better option rather than staying there. This is Barnet Council telling me this. They decided because I hadn't been there for, I don't know, the duration of just under 18 months, they decided that I don't live in that flat anymore. And so I had an argument with them and saying, actually, I was actually advised to leave rather than I left because I wanted to. So I eventually won that battle and saying, actually, I'm not using it for what they described as medical purposes. I was actually having an argument with the Barnet Council for quite a while about that, and I fight with them so that I could keep my care packages, I can keep the flat and whatever they were providing to me until I found myself another place to live. They were actually going to terminate the tenancies, care package, you name it. They were going to terminate everything over the phone without any justification that actually we're just being through a pandemic. And they're saying, oh, we've not been through one of these before. It's like, well, nor have I, and nor has anyone else across the country or the world for that matter. So yeah, so I just sat there fighting my corner, saying, actually, don't assume something to me over the phone when you've not met me before. We've not been in this situation before. You can't do anything. And this is the person that I was speaking to that I said this to.
So like for anyone, so like if we could go back, if we could go back and do things differently, would you go back and do anything different in terms of taking back your power?
I probably would have done. Yes, probably would have approached it in a slightly different way, but I would have still followed through with my plan to move on from where I was living. But I probably would have based it maybe perhaps in London rather than outside of London, but I would have still moved house.
So for anybody that has gone through something similar to you, what would your advice be?
Go for it. Don't give up. Just whatever you're planning to do, don't let anyone put a barrier in front of it, and you just follow what you know is right and you go for it.
Alright, thank you, Ben.
Thank you.